It's more or less on today's Locked On Giants podcast. Stick around, you'll find out what I mean coming up next.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you in part by McDonald's, proudly serving communities since 1965. McDonald's is the place you want to go to for tasty food at an affordable rate. And when you just want to kick back, relax, and hang out with friends, family, or the community, McDonald's, I'm loving it. And on today's show, we have a special show for you. I'm going to try something new in my quest to bring you a different type of content. The show theme is called More or Less. And basically what that means is I'm going to take a look at some players and their snap counts and their contributions and what they've been able to do. And I'm going to tell you if I think they should have more snaps or less snaps, or fewer snaps, actually. So that's coming up on today's show. And before we get to that, though, I did want to circle back because there was a Twitter Tuesday question that I didn't get to yesterday. And I apologize. It actually came in late, but I do want to get to this question because, the person reached out to me via email and said, hey, I sent this in and I promised them that I would get the question in. So let me circle back to that question. Just going to call it up here on my phone. All right. So this came from Pete M, who wanted to know, wondering if you could give your thoughts before the trade deadline. I know you said earlier that the Giants should be sellers. If you were the GM, who would you trade and what would you look for in return? All right, Pete, spoiler alert, I was actually going to do something later in the week on this, but in a nutshell, I would say it depends on the health situation right now. As you guys know, as we record this, Jabril Peppers is done for the season. He would have been one of the guys I would have looked to have traded given the depth at safety. But he unfortunately ruptured his ACL. He also has a high ankle sprain, so he is done for the season. Obviously, he's not getting traded. He would have been a guy at top of my list that I would have looked to have traded if I had been the Giants because of the depth at safety. With that off the table, I know another name that has come up is Evan Engram. I don't know, though, that the Giants would move Engram because if they're going to do more 12 and 13 personnel, I don't think you move him. I know everybody would like to see him go, but I don't think they move him. A guy I could see potentially being moved is maybe Darius Slayton if he is fully healthy. But again, they're not going to move him, I don't think, if Kenny Golladay and Kadarius Toney continue to have injury issues. Now, would the Giants maybe look to move, say, for example, O'Shane Ximines, who has been underwhelming, especially if Ellerson Smith comes back? Possibly. I mean, that would not surprise me. I know some people said, well, what about Lorenzo Carter since he is in the final year of his contract? I don't know that they would move Carter. I would think maybe Ximines might be more of a candidate. But again, you got to see where Ellerson Smith is and if he can play that outside linebacker role or if they can, get by with just Ojulari on that side, maybe a little bit of Carter Coughlin and Ellerson Smith. I think maybe you can look to move Ximines. That would be just my wild card guess, if at all. But really, Pete, it comes down to these injuries are mucking everything up. It's unfortunate, but I would say if you had asked me at the start of the season, who would be your midseason trade candidates, I would have said Peppers. I would have said Engram. I would have said Darius Slayton. And the injuries are just totally mucking it up. And I don't know. I mean, it'll be interesting to see if the Giants are sellers now, given all these injuries. So thanks for that question. And again, sorry I missed that one yesterday. And one other email I want to acknowledge. This came in from Brent. It was more of a statement about the Giants and the slow start and Daniel Jones not having all his weapons and, to start the season because of injuries. Brent, I agree with you, but I still maintain that the Giants erred in judgment with not playing their starters more during the preseason. All right. They have injuries now, so no excuse. You got the show must go on. And I just think that they should have given Daniel Jones more of an opportunity to work with some of the guys that he would have, some of the backups, because you can't assume that you're going to have all your starters for every single game. You got to mix them in. And I think the Giants erred in their judgment when they got them ready for the preseason. Hey, Giant fans, if you do a lot of driving like I do, then you need to know about a fantastic new app called Get Upside. When you open an account on Get Upside, you can get up to 25 cents per gallon back every time you fill up at the pump. Get Upside makes it easy to save on your gasoline, and they give you multiple cash out options available anytime you want. The cash out options include PayPal, direct to your bank account, Amazon gift cards, and so many more. You are in control. You choose how you want to be paid and when you want to be paid. And when you open an account today using our special promo code Touchdown, you will get a bonus 25 cents back per gallon on your first fill up. So that's up to 50 cents back when you first open your account on the Get Upside app. Visit the App Store on Apple's iTunes or the Google Play App Store and download the Get Upside app today and start saving every time you fill up at the pump. Again, that's the Get Upside app, and that special promo code for your 50-cent bonus on your first fill up is Touchdown. All right, Giant fans, you are on a Locked On Giants podcast. It is Wednesday. We're going to do more or less. So I'm going to give you some names of players that I think should get more snaps and some players who I think should see their snaps reduced. So let's kick it off with some more. Okay. And I mean more, that category. All right. A guy I would like to see get more snaps is Eli Penny. Now, Eli Penny got something like 29 snaps, I think, on offense this past week against Carolina, primarily as a short yardage back. Now, here's the thing with Eli Penny. As long as Saquon Barkley is healthy, and as long as the receivers are healthy and the tight ends are healthy and Devonta Booker is healthy, Penny's going to be an afterthought. All right. But the role that he has carved out for himself has been as a short yard back. But this is a guy who also just does, for the most part, does good things with the ball in his hands, especially as a receiver out of the backfield. And I don't know, it just might be me, but I'd like to see him get more snaps. I don't want to see his snaps reduced when Barkley comes back and some of these receivers come back. If it means splitting up some of Devonta Booker's snaps and giving some of those to Penny, I'd be in favor of that, because I've always thought Penny was kind of a under the radar type of a guy. Now, I'm not comparing him to Barkley. He's not in that category. I'm not saying he should get all of, some of Kenny Galladay's snaps or Kadarius Toney's snaps. That's not what I'm saying. I just would like to see as a change up every once in a while, get this guy, a touch, give him a pass out of the backfield. Who's going to see that coming, especially with a healthy array of offensive weapons in there? Who's going to see that coming? Probably not a lot of defensive players. So that would be a guy I would definitely want to see get some more snaps. Another guy I would like to see get more snaps is tight end Caden Smith. Now, the thing with Caden Smith is this. He's not as athletic as Evan Engram. He's not maybe in the same category of Kyle Rudolph as far as being a red zone threat. But what Caden Smith does really well, and I think this kind of flies under the radar a little bit, is he's a pretty solid blocker. All right. Evan Engram is a willing blocker. There's a difference between being a solid blocker and a willing blocker. A willing blocker is somebody who's willing to do it. Doesn't mean that they're solid. It doesn't mean they're going to get the job done cleanly or get the job done at all. Caden Smith as a blocker, to me, has been pretty good. And he has been since he's arrived here. Came from the 49ers, came from Stanford before that. He's been pretty solid. And I'm just surprised, he hangs around. He's also, key on special teams. And I would like to see this guy get more snaps. I really would. I mean, whose snaps does he take? Well, maybe a little bit of Kyle Rudolph's because, Kyle Rudolph at times, his blocking hasn't looked as sharp. And I just wonder if perhaps that has to do with his injury, which could be still something he's working his way back from. So why not get Caden Smith more involved and take some of that onus off of Kyle Rudolph and certainly take some of that onus off of Evan Ingram, who again is a willing blocker, but not necessarily a powerful blocker. All right, next guy I want to see get more snaps is Quincy Roche. Now, Quincy Roche, if you remember, was one of the waiver wire pickups by the Giants at the start of the season. And what I like about Quincy Roche's game, he's physical, okay? He is a power edge defender who can hold his own, and he can beat people up with that physicality. So his pass rush game right now, I think is a little bit limited. Doesn't really have the speed to threaten the edge, but he has the lean, he has the hand usage, and he has the upper body strength to be disruptive and push men back into the backfield and disrupt the quarterback. He's a rookie, still kind of rough around the edges, but he's a guy who can hold his contain, who's not bad against the run, and who has made the most of his limited snaps. So, as the Giants move forward, I mentioned in the last segment, a possible trade target that I don't think anybody's talking about is Oshane Ximines. Ximines is actually one of the guys I would have said when I get to the guys who I think should see their snaps limited or reduced, he's one because he hasn't really shown anything. And that's kind of disappointing considering that he was a guy that I was really hoping would develop into a solid pass rusher. And he hasn't. And not just that, but his play against the run has been disappointing. So if we're countering guys who should see more snaps versus guys who should see less snaps, I would say swap out Oshane Ximines and maybe give Quincy Roche some of those snaps and see what that brings to the pass rush. Rotate Roche in there with Lorenzo Carter and Azeez Ojulari. Remember, the Giant teams that have won championships had 3 solid pass rushers, and Carter's been quiet thus far. He hasn't recorded a sack, which is kind of disappointing considering he's received the most snaps out of all the outside linebackers. But, hopefully he starts to wake up, and those sacks start to come, especially if what I suspect is going to happen, and that is maybe Ojulari might start to see a little bit more attention that might create, some more opportunities for Carter on that other side. All right, Giant fans, we have more coming up on today's show. But first, let me tell you about Bet Online. Get all the latest news, odds, info, and sign-up bonuses for all your sporting needs by heading over to betonline.ag on your laptop or mobile device. When you open an account and use our special promo code LockedOn, you will get a 50% welcome bonus on your initial deposit. Again, that's code LockedOn at betonline.ag for your 50% welcome bonus. Terms and conditions apply. Bet Online, your online sportsbook experts. All right, Giant fans, we have more coming up on today's Locked On Giants podcast. But first, Built Bar is a healthy, low-carb, low-sugar, and high-protein treat that will satisfy your sweet tooth. Choose from 9 amazing flavors, plus the occasional limited-time offering available in nut and nut-free varieties. Visit BuiltBar.com and get 15% off your first order with the promo code LOCKED15. That's LOCKED15 for 15% off your first order at BuiltBar.com. Okay, another guy I'd like to see get more snaps is Raymond Johnson II. Raymond Johnson has played primarily down on the defensive line, has power, um, does a good job getting underneath man's pads, is disruptive, whether he's playing, off the side there or playing up the middle. Um, just a good interior guy who, to me, doesn't get a lot of credit because, obviously he gets so few snaps, and B, he doesn't really show up on the stat sheet. But if you look at the overall game that he plays, he makes things happen for guys. Like, for example, one of Aziz Ojulari's sacks last week, it was Johnson who took an inside rush and helped collapse the pocket a little bit for Ojulari to kind of shoot in there and clean up the sack. So just, sometimes those defensive linemen, it works hand in hand with the edge guys. And Johnson's a guy I've always liked. And I just would like to see him get more snaps. He's one of the undrafted free agents. And I think the Giants have themselves a keeper there with him. All right, Austin Johnson is another guy. Now, Austin Johnson, of course, has been a starter for the Giants, a guy who is part of the group that has kind of tried to fill in the gap left behind by Dalvin Tomlinson. Most of the times you see Austin Johnson lining up over the nose tackle, or I should say at nose tackle, over the center. And he's been a very active player, a guy who just, is quick. He has a quick first step. Last week, he just missed getting a sack. He got, I believe, one hit on the quarterback off of a recognition play, which, by the way, his recognition has been really, really good. And he's just been consistent. And, you look at the play of Danny Shelton, who was inactive last week because of the pectoral injury, and a guy who, quite honestly, I would be surprised if we see a lot of him moving forward, if he has that partially torn pectoral, as has been reported. But even if Danny Shelton does come back and he's healthy, I'd like to see Austin Johnson take some of those snaps that were maybe going to Shelton and see Shelton get fewer snaps if he does come back from that injury. Okay, one other guy I want to mention, and this one is kind of controversial, I realize, and I don't think it's going to change. Maybe it changes after the bye week. I don't know, but it's an offensive line change. And I get it. Have the offensive line be consistent. Have them with the same lineup for as long as you can. I understand that. But folks, I don't know about you, but Billy Price at center, his play has just left something to be desired. And let's talk about that a little bit. Here's what I would like to see if the Giants are going to make a change on that offensive line. And right now, I don't think they will, but I would rather see Matt Skura in there at center. Billy Price, to me, just hasn't been very good. Now, the quarterback center exchange, no problem there. So that's been clean. But once that ball is snapped, that's when Price has become somewhat of a liability in there. The pass blocking by him hasn't been good. There's been quite a number of pressures that have come up the center that have you sitting there and just saying, whoa. The run blocking hasn't been good either. And, you go back to last week, the failed short yardage situations down at I think it was inside of the 5-yard line. Where was the push by Billy Price on that? I mean, now he was one of several culprits, but still no push up that middle. Billy Price on that one play was stood up and pushed back. And when your center or any of your offensive linemen are stood up and pushed back, where's a running back supposed to go? He's going to have no room. So yeah, the play by Billy Price, other than the snapping, which has been fine, just, I don't know. I would go with Matt Skura. Heck, I would see if maybe even Ben Bredesen or Wes Martin could play that center spot just to shore it up a little bit, because right now they're just not getting enough push up that middle. There's pressure coming up the middle. And, I know it's a risk because you're starting over again with a new offensive line combination. and you're doing so without benefit of the injuries forcing you to do it. But I think there's room for improvement on that offensive line. And, with the bye week coming up in a couple of weeks, why not try it? Why not see how it looks in practice? Maybe they are. I don't know. But all I know is Billy Price initially looked okay, but the last few weeks, play's kind of not been there where you would hope it would be. So we'll see what the coaches think. I mean, and if they agree. All right, Giant fans, that is going to do it for today's show. Make sure you tune in tomorrow. We have the crossover show. Chris Clark, one of the co-hosts of the Locked On Chiefs podcast, is going to join me, and he's going to break down the Kansas City Chiefs, whom the Giants face on Monday Night Football next Monday. Monday Night Football, not a fan of it. Short work week, late night, but hey, I'll be there. I'll be covering everything for you. As always, got to stay on top of it, and the show must go on. So thank you so much for making the Locked On Giants podcast your first listen of the day, or if you're watching on YouTube, your first watch of the day. We will talk to you again tomorrow.